Hey, what's up, everybody? Chad Kalick here, and welcome back to the In a Crowded Room podcast for what will be a bit of a catch-up episode, which I'll explain in just a second. But first, I just want to thank all you guys for all of the emails about 74 Minutes. I'm so stoked that you guys are enjoying it. If you missed the last upload that I had, I was asked to join my good friend Jimmy Church on the Fade to Black radio show podcast. And it went almost 3 hours long. It was an incredible time. We really got into the film and talked about it quite a bit, which was a ton of fun. So if you haven't listened to that episode, please do so as well. As always, I will put the link to 74 Minutes in the description box below. But I'm going to put another link below because usually every New Year's for about 48 hours, we do a special offer to watch my entire catalog, all 20 films, which this year includes 74 Minutes, all 20 films of mine, my entire catalog, everything from obviously 74 Minutes, American Ghost Hunter, NOFACE, Two-Faced the Gray, Phantom Rider, Truther, Sky Wide Lies, Paranormal. They're all listed below. I don't want to list off all 20 of them here, but they're all listed below. And it's just a very short window where we allow people to watch the entire catalog for less than $4 a film. It's a savings of over $80. So if you ever wanted to binge watch everything that I have made to this point, all of my paranormal documentaries, here's your chance right now. Hop on it. This offer will not last longer than a day or two. Like I said, usually we do it on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. But as you guys know, I was in, I guess what could be called post-op recovery. I was on my back over that time period. So, but all is well and getting better every day. So that's great. And this episode, I'm actually going to re-record because like I told you guys, in one of the past episodes, my second to last episode, I've been asked over the years all the time, what was Christmas like in your haunted house in Persia growing up? And I've never answered that question. And I think the best way to answer it is to give you a little history and then to tell you a pretty freaky story that will actually be in two parts. I'll tell you the first half of it tonight, and then tomorrow I'll tell you the rest of it. And I'll see if Laura will hop on and talk about it too, because she was actually kind of a part of this story. But in general, Christmas was always kind of weird for me. As a kid, I didn't really understand it. Like I said, I grew up completely atheist. And what Christmas meant to me growing up before Iowa was one of the times that my dad would get leave to come home. You know, like I said, in my earlier years, he was in the Air Force, so there was a couple times a year that he would get to come home, and Christmas was one of them. So, you know, like I said, as a kid, I didn't really know my dad, but what I knew of him just seemed like superhero-ish to me. Like, when he would come home, he'd have this incredible, like, Air Force, uniform on, and just the thought and the idea as a child that, my dad was so good. He was such an amazing engineer that the government of the United States would fly him around the world to, work on these engines. And I just thought it was the coolest shit ever, guys. I mean, so that's kind of what I would get excited about for Christmas. But what's really bizarre is, like I said, until my dad got injured, religion, spirituality, like all that stuff really wasn't a part of our life. But my mother was always so heavy into Christmas decoration and decor and just, the whole kind of celebration of it, which I didn't get because, again, we weren't religious. I mean, in fact, I was actually very, very confused as a child because I couldn't make the connection, or I didn't understand the connection between Santa Claus and Jesus. I was always like, are they related? Or is Saint Nick, is that like a Catholic saint? Or like, why are we giving each other presents because Jesus was born? And And what does me being good have to do with Jesus being born? Like, I just didn't, I was super confused by all of it. But like I said, what I knew is that my dad would come home and I was going to get presents. Now, when I was younger, like I said, we were pretty poor in the beginning, for sure. And Christmas meant getting hand-me-downs I remember one Christmas I got my brother's boombox became mine. And what's really crazy is, when you're a kid, you don't know if you're poor or not. And I remember being stoked. I was like, whoa, this is my boombox now? Hell yeah. I was just like, or getting clothes, and altering secondhand clothes to make them yours and stuff. And, I was completely happy with that, man. I mean, I've never been a big materialistic person, period. Um, but I liked, like I said, when I was younger, I liked Christmas because it meant I would see my dad. But I was just confused by all of it. And I figured out pretty quickly that the Santa Claus thing, uh, you know, was Mom and Pa. But I did try to catch them several times, doing the presents under the tree thing, and I was never able to catch them. And we always did on Christmas Eve. We would open up all of our presents from family, from each other, or friends if they gave us presents. And then the following morning, if we were good throughout the year, we would get Santa's gifts. And so that's how we always rolled with it. Christmas Eve was the night of the opening presents. But as I got older, and especially after my dad was injured when we moved to the haunted Persia house, yeah, as you can imagine, it was extremely bizarre. Um, what was always kind of weird to me, and weird to me, but not in a way that I didn't like it. It freaked Laura out a little bit, but again, my mom was so into Christmas decor that you would walk inside our house, that haunted place, during Christmas, and I would put it up against, any Norman Rockwell painting you've ever seen. I mean, it would take my dad 3 weeks to like completely decorate the house for Christmas, outside and inside. I mean, uh, yeah, which when you're terrified of your home, it's a very bizarre feeling. Because look, once all that stuff happening, like I said, when school was out, I would do anything I could to be involved in anything extracurricular to just keep me away from that home. My goal was to, walk in as late as I could, sleep, and get out as early as I could. I mean, I remember like literally waking up at 4 a.m. because I convinced my mom that if you wanted to lift weights early for sports, you could be there as early as 5 a.m. Nobody was at the school opening up at 5 a.m. I used to literally go drive my car to the school and sit in the parking lot, for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then I would lift, and then I would have break, just because I did not want to be in the house. Um, but Christmas time, yeah, it's not like the paranormal takes a break for you to have a holiday. So weird stuff always happens. But the thing that I remember the most about Christmas there, well, let me first describe the entryway to our house. So this will make sense in a second. But basically, we had, if you're going to the quote back door, which was the main door that we used to our house, there was about 5 steps, and then there was an entryway that you would walk into, and then and you're indoor. It's an entryway indoor where you hang your coats, your shoes. That's a big thing in the Midwest because it's always either freezing with snow or incredibly rainy and stormy in the summertime, and there's just, your shoes are always dirty. So there's like an entryway where you take your shoes off, you hang your coat up, and it's like sealed off. So then there's a door to go into what would be our kitchen. But to the immediate right, once you would walk into the door, to the immediate right, there was this back stairway that went up to my sister's room on the second floor. Now, if you know anything about that house and how I've described it in the past, my sister's room, or what became her room after we adopted her, was the most terrifying room in the whole place. When my parents first bought the house, me being the youngest at that time, I remember my dad saying, well, listen, you're the youngest, so you pick whatever room you want. And all the bedrooms were on the second floor. The main master bedroom was on the main floor, and of course that was going to be my mom and dad's. But all the secondary bedrooms were on the second floor. And I chose the smallest one at the top of the stairway. And I remember it kind of surprised my dad. He was kind of like, why would you choose that room? And I was like, I don't know, just kind of like, felt like it was mine. The truth was that it was the closest door to the stairway to get out of there. And at the top of the stairs, every night, if you see American Ghost Hunter, at the end of it, I cannot even bring myself to go up those stairs. It takes me 3 or 4 times before I can finally get the courage to run up those stairs, because every night I would sprint to the top of those stairs, and there would be a light switch right next to the entrance to my room. And once that light switch went on, you can see back into what was my sister's room. And every night I just felt like something is there. It's waiting for me. It's waiting for me. And obviously history would prove that that room was a very haunted room where multiple things happened. So the stairway, once you walked into the entry room, back to the entryway, you'd walk up the stairs, open the door, hang your coat up, take your shoes off, and to your immediate right was the stairway that went up to my sister's room. And there was a door that we kept locked. So even if you took the stairs up there and you got to Katie's room, there'd be a door that was locked. And then there's obviously, once you're in the entryway, like I said, there's a door in front of you that lets you into the house, which was the kitchen. So one night I'm hanging out with Laura, and I come home. It's right at 10 o'clock, which was this insane curfew that I had, up until I was 18 years old. So I walk in. This would have been, I guess, my junior year. I think so. Yeah, my junior year, because I had 2 Christmases with this thing. So I walk in and I take my coat off, and I just get this really bizarre feeling, and it's towards the stairway. And I turn around, and there's like this 3.5, 4 foot, creepy looking porcelain. Yeah, it had a porcelain face, porcelain hands. It was an angel, but it was a child angel, and it was holding a candle. It would hold out in its hand like it was a knife in its hand, and the candle would like cast these shadows back on its face. And every now and then, it would move. So it's not like it was continually moving, right? Like, automated dolls that move up and down, and heads move, a head will look one way and look the other. It would just stay stationary, and every now and then, it would move its arms and move its head. But its eyes, no matter where you walked, it looked like it was looking at you. And that's the first thing I noticed. I stepped in 4 different places in the entry room, and this thing looked like it was looking at me. And there were a bunch of smaller dolls. My mother collected these dolls, Christmassy dolls. Again, like I said, the entire house was just Norman Rockwelled out. But everything about this doll just looked so evil. And it just made me incredibly uncomfortable. And I didn't know why. Besides, there were visually creepy things, but it shouldn't have affected me that way. It was just a really, just a powerful vision, and it freaked me out. And I remember initially I didn't say anything, to my mom or my dad, because you gotta understand, when you're in a haunted house like that, the last thing you want to do is talk about it, because that would have a tendency to make things happen. I know that sounds like, if you've never lived in a haunted house, I know that sounds like crazy, but the more you focus on it, the more things would happen. That's how Justin actually learned his lesson in that house, and had an overwhelming experience that convinced him. But eventually, I did bring it up, to my mom and my dad. And I think she got it at a yard sale or something. It was something secondhand that she got it, and she didn't know where it came from. And I'm not a believer that like dolls can be possessed. I'm not, a believer in Chucky or anything like that. Um, but I just basically said, man, can we get rid of this fucking thing? I mean, it is so creepy. I don't even want to walk in the door. I feel like the thing is looking at me no matter where I go. There's nothing about it that's appealing. It looks evil. It's bizarre that it's on some weird timer where it randomly, like randomly moves. Um, and the initial response was kind of like, oh, come on, like get over it, from her. My dad didn't say much about it. I think he found it interesting that I had such a reaction to it. And I didn't say much about it past that. It was just something that every single night I dreaded walking in that door, because I knew that damn devil angel would be sitting there staring at me. And it was huge. Like I said, this thing was 3.5, 4 feet tall. This is not some like little angel. So eventually, it was rare that Laura would come over, just because I just typically just assumed keep her out of the house, period. And I just didn't want anything to ever happen to her. And yeah, it was just very rare that she would come over. And but she finally did. And I remember she pulled up and I was up in my room. And I was, saw her pull up, and I figured, oh, she'll be up here in a few minutes. And she took a little bit longer than usual. And she gets to the top of the stairs, and I see her, and I'm like, hey, babe, and I like, tell her come here, and I like sit down and hug her and all this stuff. And she looks at me, and she was like, so what is with the doll? I'm like, yeah, right? And she's like, that thing is terrifying. I'm like, yeah, I know. I feel like it watches me. And she's like, yeah. She's like, it just the whole time, it just feels like, yeah. I'm like, I know, I totally agree. And like I said, on tomorrow's episode, I'll ask her to come on and, share her thoughts about it as well. So it was just something that without me even saying anything to her, she immediately, locked onto it too. And was like, there is something about that doll that is so bizarre. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And I'm like, and it's weird to even say that because I don't believe in dolls, being possessed or having spirits or what, you know what I mean? I'm like, that sounds like the most crazy shit I've ever heard, I'm like, but I can't get over the fact that I am terrified by this thing. I mean, seriously, if that thing ever made a sound, I mean, I would kick that thing so hard. I mean, and it's not like I didn't want to. I wanted to just, yeah, I wanted to punt that thing out the house, but it was mom, so you couldn't touch it. But it was there every night. And no matter how much I complained about it, nobody did anything. So finally, one night I'm asleep. Katie's asleep in her room. So I'm just laying there, and I would often have a hard time sleeping. It's kind of a sleep with one eye open scenario. In fact, I developed this from living there. I developed this myoclonic jerk syndrome, which is like if you would watch me sleep, I would almost look like I was having seizures, but it wasn't seizures. If you know what a myoclonic jerk is, it's like when you have a dream and you fall and you're going to hit the ground, and right before you hit, you wake up. Well, it's like this rare nervous disorder where I wouldn't wake up, and things like that would keep happening, violent events in my dreams. And so when you look at me, you think, oh my God, is he having a seizure? And it wasn't that I was having a seizure. It was just that I would experience these things in my dream of, smashing against the ground or being shot or stabbed or anything like that in the dream, but I wouldn't wake up from it, which it was just a nervous condition that took years to basically conquer. So I always kind of slept with one eye open. And this came from that house, this whole condition. So I'm, just kind of sitting there. It's probably, I don't know, 3, 4 in the morning. I'm watching the clock because I want to get up and leave to go, quote, work out at 5 a.m. And suddenly I hear footsteps on those back stairs. Step, 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 step. And it stops. And I'm like, whoa, did I for sure hear that? And I'm like sitting here going, is that something else? Or is that sounded like a footstep, but it sounded like it came from Katie's room. So I sit up and I look into her room. Look right down it. I'm just waiting for it to happen again. and it doesn't happen again. But I hear then what sounds like our kitchen door open. And usually that's locked. Every night that's locked. There was no reason that it shouldn't be locked, but that's what it sounded like. And I'm like, oh my God, is someone in our house? And all of a sudden I hear these like pitter patter running footsteps. Sounds like a child. It sounds like my little sister running through. I mean, you could hear the footsteps get softer when it hit the living room because that's carpet. And then you hear it run from the carpet onto the linoleum floor in the kitchen. And this went on, I mean, probably for 2 or 3 minutes. It just sounded like someone was running back and forth. And I'm going, that can't be Katie. Katie's got to be asleep. Every now and then, Katie on her own, whenever she got freaked out, sometimes she would bypass me, go down the stairs, and go straight to my mom or my dad. And I'm like, there's just no way that Katie at 4 in the morning is not in her bed and she's running downstairs. But then I start thinking, maybe she opened her door in her room and that was her on the stairs that I heard. And I just heard her at the bottom of the steps for some reason, and maybe that's her down there. So I convinced myself, well, you gotta go check this out. So I get up and I'm slowly walking in to Katie's room. And I look around the corner, and yeah, there she is, sound asleep. I'm like, oh my God, who is in our house? And I'm thinking somebody is in our house. But what freaks me out is, again, those were, you can tell adult footsteps, obviously, from child footsteps. So I go down the stairs, slow as hell, terrified, get to the bottom of the stairs. No one's there anywhere. No one's in the kitchen. No one's in the living room. I make my way over to the door, like the kitchen door that you open from the inside. And there was, in the door, there was a square glass like window in the door. So you can see from the entryway into the kitchen and vice versa. So I like look out, and that little frickin' doll is standing there, but it's angled. It's angled like it's looking at me. And I'm like, what the hell? Because it was always facing, like if you walked straight into it, it was always facing directly at me, but from my right. So east of me, basically. This time, it was turned at an angle like it was looking at the window. I'm like, no way. No way. This thing, it can't be running around. Like, what? This is insane. Oh my God. But I'm still terrified because I know what I heard. I know what I heard. Oh my God. So obviously I freak out. I go wake, my parents up, and I tell my dad, I'm like, and my mom, and she was super tired that night. She was listening, but she was falling back asleep. And, again, my dad, the thing that my dad knew is he knew how hard I fought even believing in this. He knew how hard it was for me to wrap my head around it. And he knew if I said it, it happened. He knew that. And, he was looking at me going, okay. And, my mom was going, well, listen, I know obviously the place is haunted, but, maybe you just were in a dream because you're freaked out by it. And I'm like, no, I wasn't in a dream. I've been awake this whole time, So, I tell my dad, I'm like, we've got to get rid of this thing. And he's like, I don't have any attachment to it, but your mom does, and my mom's like, we're not getting rid of it. I mean, it's fine. It freaks you out, but there's not a doll running around the house. I'm like, okay. And then I go back and I look, and it's still at an angle. And I'm thinking, how could this thing have moved at an angle? Well, here's the facts. I mean, because it's a separate entryway, when you open one door, and there was a stairway that went up, it would create this monster draft. It really would. And the same thing, if you shut the kitchen door and locked it too fast, it would create this massive air displacement. So what I was thinking is, for all I know, that night, I could have been freaked out when I got home. ran through, pushed the door shut really fast, and it created some kind of air draft that just moved the thing. Maybe I heard just the normal creepy stuff that I heard in that house all the time. Footsteps weren't anything new. In that house, child footsteps were. I never heard a child running back and forth from carpet to like linoleum floor. Um, but because I'm somebody who does always want to figure something out, I had kind of come to the conclusion that I must have pulled that door shut, created a draft, and moved it. Because I'm terrified of it, I'm kind of, filling in the blanks myself with my own imagination. Yes, I did hear the footsteps and the running, but again, that isn't anything new in that house. We used to hear footsteps at every single floor. Granted, again, they always sounded adult. They were always heavy. They were always large, like it was a person. So I'm like, okay, I just need to let this go. I'm not going to, obviously make a fight about this thing, leaving, because it's not like the whole house isn't haunted, for Christ's sakes. The whole house was haunted. So I was always like, it's not like if I kick the doll out, the place is going to be, some wonderful, home I could come home to. So I'm like, whatever, I'm not going to argue about it. And a couple weeks go by, same thing. Every time I come home, I'm terrified to go through that room. And now we're like, 3 or 4 days from like Christmas Eve. And I'm sitting here just going, I hate this thing. I hate this thing. Every time I come back, it immediately reminds me that I'm walking into this incredibly haunted house that has absolutely terrified me, ripped my family apart. Nobody trusts anybody. Everybody's terrified half the time. Nobody wants to go anywhere alone in the house. I just hated it. I hated it. So once again, I'm up in my room. There's no school now. We're on vacation. I remember that. What I wanted to do that morning is get up and go a four-wheeling. That was my father had bought me a four-wheeler. I loved it. My best friend had a four-wheeler. We would just take off for the day and just go have a blast. So I was waiting for the sun to come up so I could do that. And it's probably, again, 3, 4 in the morning at the same time. And I hear the footsteps again. Up the back stairs. Same way. Just tiny, not like loud stomping footsteps. You can just hear click, 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 click. But this time they sound like they come all the way up to the door. I'm like, oh my God. I get up right away, go into Katie's room. She is sound asleep. Now the door that locked in her room also had that glass window. So I slowly walk over and get up the courage to actually look. And I'm sitting here thinking, man, if there's anything there, I am going to lose my mind. So I count down to 3. 3, 2, 1. Look. Nothing there. Absolutely nothing there. So as I'm walking back to my room, I hear those same pitter-patter running footsteps downstairs, from linoleum onto carpet to linoleum, back and forth. I'm just like, oh my God, just stops me dead in my tracks. I got goosebumps telling this right now. God, oh, this was terrifying. And I'm standing there, and I was just like, if I get down here and there's some little doll running around, again, I am going to bludgeon and attack that thing and punt it and just take, I'm going to rip this thing into 1,000 pieces out of fear and just absolute rage of what is going on, because I hate this fucking little devil angel so bad. So slowly but surely, I make my way over to that same kitchen door. I can see that it's locked. That's a good sign. I'm like, okay, no one's come through here. And I'm telling myself, look, if it's partially at an angle, don't freak out. Okay? If it's partially at an angle, don't freak out, because you've seen this before, and you know that it could be some kind of like draft that moved it when someone came in, or maybe the last person that came in. I'm like, okay, just grab the door and open it. So I grab the door and lock it, open it up, and I look right away to the stairs, and I don't see it. And I'm like, what the hell? And I look down, and the thing's right in front of me. It is right in front of the door, 4 inches from my body. Swear to God. I screamed bloody murder, slammed the door, went running back. I was so freaked out. Oh my God. My dad got up, busts out of bed, comes out there, and I'm like, that thing is right in front of that fucking door. I'm like, I'm telling you, I heard the same shit. It was running up those stairs. I heard the running down here. You didn't hear that? My dad's going to chat. I heard no running. I heard nothing. I heard you. And I'm like, well, I'm not lying. He's like, no, I don't think you're lying. He was like, I didn't hear anything. I'm freaking out. Totally, totally freaking out. So one would think that would be the end of this, right? You would think this thing shouldn't be in front of the door. This thing should not be standing literally in front of the door. There's no way that could have happened. No wind displacement is going to take something off a second step, move it down to the ground, slide it over, and then have it facing almost nose to nose to this kitchen door. There's no way. There's no way. That's impossible. I could go in there and open every door I wanted and create every draft I could possibly create. There's no way that that's going to happen. But, Mom did not want to get rid of it. She liked it. It almost became like this thing that they would, not so much my dad, but she would give me shit about every now and then. I was just like, man, listen, this is terrifying. That thing has made me feel completely creepy since it was bought. There's no reason to have it. It's absolutely fucking terrifying. I hate it. I mean, and this is Christmas time, for Christ's sakes. This is not... trust me, the house's Norman Rockwell design did not match what was going down in that house on a nightly basis. But eventually something would happen with the devil angel doll, as I like to call it, that would cause us to get rid of it. And I will tell you what that is on tomorrow's episode. I hope you enjoyed the In a Crowded Room podcast, and I will be back tomorrow with more. All the best.